My father humiliated me my whole life for not being business material. I built a secret $200 empire for 7 years, and when I won the industry's biggest award in front of him, he discovered the company he admired was mine and never saw his own destruction coming. I'm 32 years old. I work in real estate, though my family doesn't really know that. And I need to tell this story because what happened a few weeks ago at that industry gala basically changed everything between my family and me, and I'm still processing it. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid and my father, Arthur Harrington, decided I was the invisible middle child, you know, the one who wasn't quite as brilliant as my brother Adrian or quite as charming as my younger sister Delilah. I don't remember exactly when that dynamic started, honestly, but what I do remember perfectly is when I was like 14 years old, and I told my father I wanted to learn about the family business, Harrington Enterprises, and he literally laughed and told me to focus on finding good hobbies because business wasn't for me. I grew up in Chicago, in one of those families where money was never a problem but affection was. You know what I mean? My father built a real estate empire from scratch, started with nothing and ended up with one of the most recognized firms in the city, and he basically dedicated his entire life to that business. My mother died when I was 8, ovarian cancer. And after that, my father became even more distant, like he channeled all his pain into working more and more. Adrian, who's 3 years older than me, automatically became the golden child, like the perfect heir who was going to continue the Harrington legacy. Delilah, who's 4 years younger than me, was the baby of the family, the spoiled one who could do whatever she wanted and everyone adored her. And I was there in the middle, invisible, without a clear role in the family narrative. Throughout high school and college, I tried to get my father's attention in different ways. I got good grades. I graduated with honors in business administration from Northwestern, an amazing university. By the way, I did internships at investment firms. I learned everything I could about financial analysis and real estate development. Every time I tried to talk to my father about joining Harrington Enterprises, he'd deflect the conversation or straight up ignore me. Adrian had been working there since he was 22. My father had put him in important roles almost immediately after college, but with me, it was different. Once, I must have been like 24 years old. We were at a family dinner at that huge house in Lincoln Park where we grew up, and I casually mentioned that I'd been studying real estate market trends in Chicago's emerging neighborhoods. My father didn't even look up from his plate, and Adrian let out a condescending little laugh and said something like, "Celeste, leave the serious business to those of us who know what we're doing, okay?" Delilah was more focused on her phone, probably planning her next party or something. The thing is, I kept trying. I don't know why. I guess part of me was still seeking that validation, that recognition that I was also valuable, that I also had something to offer. After graduating, I started working at a mid-sized real estate firm, nothing glamorous, basically doing property analysis and helping with due diligence for commercial purchases. It was good work. I learned a ton, but obviously it wasn't Harrington Enterprises. Every family gathering was basically the same thing. My father and Adrian talking about their deals, their important clients, their million-dollar projects, and me sitting there like another piece of furniture. Sometimes I'd try to contribute something to the conversation, some insight or perspective based on what I was seeing in the market, and they'd cut me off mid-sentence or simply ignore what I said and continue their conversation as if I hadn't opened my mouth. The moment that changed everything, the moment that really made me decide enough is enough, was at a dinner like 7 years ago, when I was 25. My father had organized one of those informal business dinners at the house. He'd invited some important partners, and obviously Adrian was there playing the great businessman. I had been working on an analysis for weeks about a specific area of Chicago that was about to explode in value, Pilsen to be specific. And I thought, okay, this is my chance to show them I know what I'm talking about. I brought my laptop with all the data, growth projections, demographic analysis, everything very professional and backed up. I waited for the right moment in the conversation and started presenting my findings. Like I literally put my laptop on the dining room table and began showing them the numbers. My father interrupted me before I could get to the second slide and said, "Celeste, honey, this is a dinner, not a business meeting. Besides, I don't think our guests want to hear amateur speculation about the market." Adrian laughed. Some of the guests looked uncomfortable, and I stood there with my laptop open, feeling like the stupidest person in the world. I went to my apartment that night I lived in Wicker Park back then in a small studio I paid for with my own money, because honestly, I never wanted to depend financially on my family, and I stayed awake until 4 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. And that's when I made the decision. You know, that moment of clarity where you basically say, okay, it's over. I'm not going to keep begging for crumbs of attention and respect. If my family didn't want to recognize my talent, if they didn't want to give me an opportunity in their precious empire, then I was going to build my own empire, and I was going to do it so well that eventually they wouldn't be able to ignore me even if they wanted to. It sounds kind of vengeful when I say it like that, but in that moment, I didn't see it as revenge. I saw it as survival, as the only way to prove, even if just to myself, that I was worth something in this real estate world that my family dominated. I started small, very small. I had some savings, like $40,000 that I'd action, saved up working and basically not spending on anything for years, and I started looking for undervalued properties. I spent my nights and weekends analyzing listings, visiting neighborhoods, talking to owners of small properties who wanted to sell. I bought my first property 6 months after that disastrous dinner, a 3-unit building in Logan Square that needed remodeling but had incredible potential. I bought it for $180,000. Invested another 30,000 inches renovations, doing it myself when I could to save costs, and rented it out, generating positive cash flow immediately. That's when I met Sophia Tran. Sophia is, basically, the most charismatic and brilliant person I've ever met in my life. We met at a real estate networking event. Yes, I went to those things religiously. I needed to make contacts outside my family's circle, and we connected immediately. She'd worked in corporate sales for years and wanted to transition to real estate. She had all the front-facing skills. I mean presentation and public relations, but not so much the technical background or the capital to start. I had the technical knowledge, the small but growing initial capital, and zero interest in being the public face of anything because, honestly, I wanted to keep this secret from my family as long as possible. Like, I knew that if my father or Adrian found out what I was doing, they'd find a way to discredit it or minimize it. So I preferred to operate completely under the radar. Sophia and I partnered up like 6.5 years ago and formed Tran and Partners. The name was my decision. I wanted Sophia to be the public face of the company because she was incredible at that. Charismatic, eloquent, with that presence that makes people trust you automatically. I stayed as a silent partner, handling all the strategy, finances, investment analysis, critical decisions about what properties to buy or develop. We structured the company in such a way that my name wouldn't appear in any public documents, at least not in a way that connected it directly to decision-making. For all external purposes, Tran and Partners was Sophia Tran's company, period. The first 2 years were brutal, I'm not gonna lie. I worked my day job at the mid-sized real estate firm, where nobody knew I had my own company on the side, and then I'd get home and work on Tran and Partners until 2 or 3 in the morning. Sophia also kept her initial job during the first year until we had enough income for her to dedicate herself full-time to our company. We'd buy small properties, renovate them, rent them, or resell them, and little by little, we built a solid portfolio. By the 3rd year, we had like 12 properties. By the 4th year, we had 25. And by the 5th year, we were already developing bigger commercial projects, complete renovations of entire buildings, partnerships with builders, all that. Meanwhile, my family life remained exactly the same. I'd go to mandatory family dinners every 2 weeks or so, sit there quietly while Adrian and my father bragged about their latest deals, and when they asked me what I was doing, I'd say something vague like, still working in real estate, analysis and stuff like that, and they'd nod without really listening and continue with their conversation. Delilah by then had already married some rich guy, Logan or Jason or I don't remember his name honestly, and basically her life was going to brunches and organizing charity events and looking perfect on Instagram. They never asked me specific details about my work, never showed genuine interest, and I didn't offer information either. It was easier that way, I guess. There was a moment, I think it was like 3 years ago, where it almost all got discovered. We were at a family dinner, and one of my father's partners casually mentioned he'd heard about a new firm on the Chicago scene that was making impressive moves, Tran and Partners. My heart literally stopped for a second, but my father just said something like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that name. New competition, I guess." And Adrian added with that characteristic arrogance of his, "They're going to need more than a couple of pretty projects to compete with Harrington Enterprises." I was sitting there drinking my wine, trying to keep my face neutral, while inside I was thinking, if only they knew. Sophia almost died laughing when I told her that story afterwards. She thought it was hilarious that my own family had no idea I was their new competition. The following years were of exponential growth for Tran and Partners. We started winning industry awards, recognition for innovative projects, mentions in real estate publications. Sophia was brilliant in interviews and presentations. She always gave credit to the incredible team behind Tran and Partners, but never mentioned specific names. Never exposed me. Our portfolio grew to over 80 properties. We had projects in several key Chicago neighborhoods, and our valuation reached multiple millions. I still lived relatively modestly. I'd moved to a bigger apartment in West Loop, but nothing extravagant. I drove a 2018 Honda Civic that I bought used. Basically, there were no external signs that I was making so much money because I didn't want anyone asking questions. At family dinners, the dynamic became increasingly absurd. My father and Adrian started complaining about Tran and Partners. Like, that firm is winning contracts that should be ours. Their development strategy is aggressive. They're disrupting the market. Blah, 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 once Adrian said. Whoever's behind that company clearly doesn't understand the value of established relationships in this industry. They're being too disruptive. And I had to bite my tongue not to laugh in his face. Delilah didn't even pay attention to those conversations. She was more interested in planning her second baby shower or something. I don't remember well. The industry gala that changed everything was 3 weeks ago. It's this giant annual event organized by the Chicago Real Estate Association. All the important players in the industry attend. There are awards, recognition, networking, all that stuff. Sophia had been begging me for months to go with her. She said Tran and Partners was nominated in several categories, and it would be weird if the founder wasn't there. I'd always avoided these events for obvious reasons. I knew my family would be there, but Sophia finally convinced me. She told me, "Listen, Celeste, we've been doing this for almost 7 years. You've built something incredible. How long are you going to hide?" And she was right, I guess. Even though the idea of being in the same ballroom as my father and Adrian gave me terrible anxiety. I arrived at the gala at the Four Seasons feeling completely out of place, even though I was wearing a designer dress that Sophia insisted I buy for the occasion. Something Armani in navy blue. Like $3,000 that honestly hurt to spend because I'm still kind of cheap with those things. The ballroom was packed. There were like 400 people. All the important names in Chicago real estate were there. I saw my father and Adrian almost immediately. They were at a table near the front with Harrington Enterprises partners, my father wearing one of his characteristic Tom Ford suits, Adrian next to him looking like his arrogant mini-me. Delilah was there too with her husband, looking perfect as always. They saw me come in, but honestly, I don't think they registered that I was there. They probably thought I was with someone from my real job or something. Sophia and I sat at our table, which ironically was pretty close to my family's table, and the ceremony started. There were several awards and recognitions, the typical boring speech from the association president, video presentations of outstanding projects. Then came the moment for the big award, the Award for Innovation and Excellence in Real Estate Development, which is basically the most prestigious recognition you can receive in the Chicago industry. The nominees were 5 firms, including Harrington Enterprises and Tran and Partners. When they announced that Tran and Partners had won, I literally felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. Sophia grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight, and we got up to go to the stage. As we walked toward the stage, I could feel all the eyes on us. I heard someone at my family's table murmur something. I think it was Adrian telling my father, "It's that new firm again. This is ridiculous." Sophia went up to the podium to receive the award and give the acceptance speech, and I was standing there next to her trying to breathe normally. Sophia started her speech, thanked our team, talked about our development philosophy, mentioned some of our most successful projects, and then, in a move we hadn't explicitly planned but that I kind of knew was coming, she said something that changed everything. She said, "And I want to take this moment to finally give the recognition she deserves to the true mastermind behind Tran and Partners, my partner and co-founder who has preferred to work behind the scenes these years, but who is responsible for every strategic decision, every financial analysis, every development vision we've executed. Please give a round of applause to Celeste Harrington." The silence that followed was probably only 2 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I could see my father and Adrian at their table, their faces going from confusion to shock to something I can't describe exactly. Disbelief, maybe? The rest of the ballroom started applauding. Some seemed genuinely surprised and excited to learn the identity of the person behind Tran and Partners. Sophia handed me the microphone and gestured for me to say something. Honestly, I hadn't prepared any speech because I never thought we'd get to this moment. But the words just came out. I said something like, "Thank you. This is incredibly unexpected and emotional for me." Sophia and I have worked tirelessly for almost 7 years to build Tran and Partners from scratch, and it's been the most challenging and rewarding project of my life. I paused and looked directly toward the table where my family was, and added, "I especially want to thank all the people who underestimated me over the years, who told me business wasn't for me, who cut me off when I tried to contribute ideas, who assumed I had nothing valuable to offer. You were my biggest motivation, because you taught me that the only validation I really need is my own. I built this without asking permission, without asking for help, and without asking for recognition from anyone except my incredible partner Sophia and our team. So, thank you." This award is confirmation that trusting myself was the best decision I could have made. The applause after that was deafening. People I didn't even know came up afterwards to congratulate me, to tell me it had been inspiring, that they'd heard great things about Tran and Partners, and now they understood why. Sophia was radiant. She hugged me and said, "Finally. Finally you came out of the shadows and the world can see how incredible you are." But honestly, I could only think about my father and Adrian's faces, how they looked completely devastated by the revelation. After like an hour of networking and congratulations, I needed fresh air and went out to the hotel terrace. I was there alone, looking at the city of Chicago lit up at night when I heard footsteps behind me. It was my father. He looked old suddenly, like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. He was 66 years old at that time and had always been this imposing and confident man. But there he looked small, vulnerable. He stood there for a moment without saying anything, and finally spoke. He said, "Celeste? I didn't know. I had no idea you were behind Tran and Partners. We've been following that firm for years. Adrian and I have analyzed their strategies, their projects, their growth. I never imagined it was you." I told him, "Dad, that was exactly the point. I needed to prove myself without your name, without your influence, without your network of contacts. I needed to know I could do it on my own. And I did. I built it all without your help. And it turns out I'm pretty good at this thing you said wasn't for me." My father looked destroyed. Honestly, I'd never seen him like that. And he said something like, "I was wrong. Completely wrong about you. And I'm sorry, Celeste. I'm sorry for underestimating you. I'm sorry for making you feel invisible. I'm sorry for not seeing your talent when it was right in front of my eyes all these years." Part of me wanted to tell him his apology was like 7 years late, that the damage was already done. But another part of me just felt sadness about all the lost time, about the father-daughter relationship we never had. I told him, "I appreciate your apology, Dad, but you need to understand that I don't need your approval anymore." The truth is, I stopped needing it a long time ago. I built something I'm incredibly proud of, and I did it exactly because you guys didn't believe in me. We stood there in silence for a moment, and then he said something that took me completely by surprise. He said, "Celeste, I want to propose something. What would you think if Harrington Enterprises acquired Tran and Partners? We could merge the companies. You and Adrian could co-lead the combined operation. We'd finally be a true family business." I laughed. I couldn't help it. I laughed because it was so absurd. So typical of my father to think the solution was to absorb my company into his, make it part of his empire, instead of recognizing that I'd built something independent and valuable on its own. I told him, "Dad, with all due respect, no, absolutely not. I'm not interested in selling Tran and Partners. I'm not interested in merging it with Harrington Enterprises, and I'm definitely not interested in co-leading anything with Adrian. Tran and Partners is mine. It's my creation, my baby, and I like it exactly as it is." He tried to argue, said that together we could dominate the Chicago market, that it would make financial sense, that it would be a way to rectify past mistakes. But I'd already made my decision. I told him, "Dad, I don't need to be part of your empire to be successful. I'm already achieving it on my own, and I'm not going to give up my independence and freedom for a merger that would only serve to make you feel better about how you treated me all these years." My father left the terrace without saying anything else. He looked defeated, but I guess he finally understood that I was no longer that little girl desperate for his approval. Adrian tried to talk to me afterwards. He basically came to offer me the same thing as my father, some version of, join us, let's be a business family. But I told him no in an even more direct way. I told him, Adrian, I spent years listening to you tell me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't know what I was talking about, that serious business was for people like you. Well, it turns out I know exactly what I'm talking about. And the only thing I want from you now is professional respect when we cross paths in the industry. I don't need your friendship. I don't need your partnership. I just need you to recognize me as the serious competition I always was. It's been 3 weeks since the gala and my life has changed in ways I'm still processing. The story of the secret Harrington heir who built her own empire went viral in Chicago real estate circles. Articles have come out in industry publications. Sophia and I have had to turn down like 15 interviews because honestly, I don't want this to become a media circus. Tran and Partners has received investment proposals from everywhere, new projects, new opportunities. It's being overwhelming, but in a good way. My father has sent me like 5 emails trying to invite me to lunch to talk, but I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe I'll never be ready, and that's okay. What surprises me most is how I feel. I thought finally receiving public recognition, especially in front of my family, would make me feel vindicated or triumphant or something dramatic like that. But the truth is, I mainly feel peace. Peace because I'm no longer carrying this weight of trying to prove something to my father or Adrian. Peace because I can finally be open about the work I love and am proud of. Peace because I built something real and meaningful with my own hands and my own brain. Sophia says I should write a book or give motivational talks or something, but honestly, I just want to keep doing what I've been doing, building incredible projects, helping transform neighborhoods, creating spaces where people want to live and work. Delilah called me last week. It was weird because we never really talk, and she told me she also had no idea what I was doing and that she always thought I was like the boring sister who didn't do anything interesting with her life, and now she feels bad for never asking me what I was really doing. I don't know what to do with that information, honestly. I guess I appreciate that at least she's acknowledging that she also ignored me all these years. But we're not in a place where we're suddenly going to be best friends or anything. This whole situation has taught me that family isn't always what we think it should be. And it's okay to create your own definition of success and happiness without expecting your biological family to understand it or celebrate it. Yesterday, I was at the Tran and Partners office, which, by the way, we just expanded to a bigger space in the Loop because we're hiring more people. And I was reviewing proposals for a new project in South Loop when Sophia came in and put a bottle of champagne on my desk. She told me, "This is for you, for finally letting the world see who you really are." And I told her, "This is for us." This would have been possible without our partnership. We toasted there in the office on a Tuesday afternoon, and I realized that this company we built, this friendship and professional partnership we have, is worth more than any recognition I could have received from my biological family. I built my own legacy, on my own terms, and that's enough. More than enough. Honestly.